Now joining us here on Bulldogs Now, Nick Roush from Kentucky Sports Radio, part of On3.com. And Nick knows all things about Kentucky football. Nick, thanks so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure being here. Happy to join, talk a little ball today. It'll be here before you know it.
This is one of those really intriguing matchups because obviously the SEC East, quote-unquote, rivalry, I guess, and then kind of the way the matchup went last year. But more than that, it's the former Dogs that are now on the Kentucky roster. And let's just get it started with Brock Vandagriff. He was a fan favorite when he was at Georgia, obviously sat behind some quarterbacks, never got to start. What has been the initial kind of reaction to Brock, what he did this past spring, and how comfortable they are? I know there's a new OC in play as well.
Yeah, no, it's an odd dynamic because last year Kentucky went big in the transfer portal getting Devin Leary, who is arguably the hottest commodity available, and that didn't pan out the way they expected. So they've been trying to keep things relatively hush-hush around Brock. They don't want to set expectations too high and have him fall short. But I do think he is a much better fit for what they want to do than what Devin Leary did a year ago. And part of the reason why I think so many of the Georgia fans out there wanted to see BVG in action is because of his athletic ability, his size. I mean, he's 6'3", can move really well. He kind of fits the Will Levis prototype, except he doesn't exactly look like an NFL tight end or an NFL linebacker. So in Lexington, they're very excited to see what he can do with his legs to add that quarterback running ability back into the offense. I think what Bush Hamdan does suits him well. And from all the folks I talked to down at Georgia, the biggest thing holding Brock back was reps. He's getting them now. He was being the backup. You're usually the most popular guy on the team. Now we get to see what he can actually do when his number's called and he gets to go under center.
Is the biggest question for Brock's success how good this offensive line is going to be for Kentucky, you think? Or do you think they've got that position shored up?
No, that's a great point because Will Levis was the most sacked quarterback in the SEC during his final campaign, and that really halted his growth, his development. But the one positive is I do think they did a good job in the offseason of addressing that, where you saw steps forward last year. And then in the offseason, they went and got Eric Wolford, brought him back. He was in Lexington for a year or two before bolting for Alabama. Guy can coach them football. They brought in a Tennessee transfer and Gerald Mincey, who's logged a ton of experience, and a Florida transfer as well to sort of fortify that inside. You've got 4 of your top 5 back and a solid left tackle in Marcus Cox, who's going to be in Dallas for SEC Media Day. So it's not going to be the big blue wall that helped Kentucky rush for 2,000 yards or whatever it was when they were playing a receiver at quarterback in Lynn Bowden. It's not going to be one of those that you think of as one of the best in the SEC. But I think it's going to be in the middle of the road, which should be good enough to get Brock Vandagriff plenty of time to have some success this fall.
I know the defense is probably, in my opinion, one of the most underrated defenses in the SEC. I don't think enough people are talking about the defense. I mean, I look at Deion Walker. We all know him, probably going to be a top 10 pick if he has a season like last year. 7.5 sacks, 55 tackles. And I want to also get to the linebacking core, but let's start with him.
I spoke with a coach off the record who had to scout him and said, I can't believe that this guy never goes off the field. He has a motor unlike any other. It's kind of like Max Crosby, where this dude is just going. And the fact that he can play at so many different positions on the defensive line, right? Like he's not just lining up at nose and eating up the A-gaps. He's rushing from the end. You know, he's twisting. He's stunning. He is one of the most impressive athletes I've ever seen at the University of Kentucky. He is going to be a joy to watch.
Obviously, you get Jamon Dumas-Johnson, Pop, as they called him in Athens now, and he was one of the leaders of that defense. The fact that he had to transfer to get guaranteed playing time just shows you the depth Georgia has at that position. But he's a stud. He was very well liked when he was here. I know Derek Jackson's back and then J.J. Weaver's back. So how are you guys feeling about that linebacking core? Do you think it's the difference between, a season like last year where they could have won an extra 2-3 games and they kind of fell short a couple times? Do you think that linebacking core can maybe carry some of the deficiencies in other parts of this team?
There's been many times in the Mark Stoops era where you felt like the defense had to win the game for the offense, and they weren't good enough to last year. But I think they will be this year, and a lot of it is because of Pop, right? Derek Jackson, a South Georgia native, that dude's a great football player. He's hard-nosed. He tore his Achilles and came back 6 months later and was playing. Like that. He's an impressive individual, but he's not the most vocal leader, right? I don't think he commands the room in the same way that Pop does, where that guy don't take no crap. That is his locker room. And I think that is probably what's going to stand out and really be the difference maker more so than anything else, is that culture, where I think he kind of scoffed at when we asked him, do you have to kind of ease your way as being a leader? And he's like, dude, I don't know any other way. Like, that's just how I am. And so that I think ultimately is going to help make sure that this defense, there's not missed assignments, there's not miscues, and that they're on their P's and Q's at all times.
What would you say like a fair score prediction would be right now?
Probably 38-24. That's a respectable, because Kentucky, I think they had covered 6 straight years against Kirby up until last year when the wheels kind of fell off down there at Sanford Stadium. But I do think Kentucky can put a little game pressure on them, but ultimately that offense just, I don't trust them quite early enough in the season to have enough firepower to be able to keep up with Kirby Smart and co.